knows that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon. Take that spoon. Everyone knows that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon.
Hello and welcome to With Bowl and Spoon. We're here with my guest, TJ.
Hi guys.
Introduce yourself.
TJ Jackson here, the owner of Real Fungi LLC. It is a cooperative agriculture project mostly focused on wild mushrooms and some wild greens from the forests of PA and all over the country.
I met TJ at the farmer's market when I was trying to learn to like mushrooms. And, you know, not liking mushrooms is like saying you don't like what's something else that's super varied.
Vegetables.
Yeah, because there's so many different varieties of them.
Totally.
And I felt silly and I needed to learn. And so you have helped me through my mushroom journey, and I thank you so much.
You're most welcome. You know, I think it's pretty common. You know, when we grew up, there weren't many options for mushrooms. You know, you had your rubbery mushrooms from a can, and if you were lucky, you were able to get some fresh ones at the grocery store, but they were all the same thing. Agaricus, Bosporus, so your button mushrooms, your cremini, your portobello, it's all the same thing, just different sizes and colors. And, you know, I don't want to criticize portobellos. There are a lot of people that love them, but
They're like the
kind of a boring mushroom.
Steak of mushrooms.
Yeah.
Like use them for.
And not that they're boring, but when it's the only mushroom you've eaten for 20 years, I guess it could be. So, well, you know, we don't get many options. You go to a grocery store even now.
Didn't, though.
We didn't. We do have more options now. But in a traditional grocery store setting, you're still lucky to maybe find, 2, 3, maybe 4 varieties of mushrooms.
That's true, yeah.
You know, and that's at a higher end grocery store. Your local Giant probably still only has some cremini and portobello, maybe a shiitake.
Maybe some dried.
Yeah, there might be some dried,
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like Asian stores have always had a lot of different varieties of mushrooms.
And that is a good point. You know, for a long time, before I started this business, I actually went to Asian markets to look for other varieties of mushrooms to eat.
Cool.
You can find actually all sorts of cool things at Asian markets. It's a good place to find new foods.
You have had an interest in mushrooms for a long time.
Yes.
How did that come about?
It's been pretty much my whole life. When I was, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years old, it's one of my earliest memories, is actually going out and hunting for morels with my grandfather. And it was kind of like a magical experience, you know, an Easter egg hunt, but, you know, just kind of like the grown-ups liked it too. There was a little something more to it. And,
that's
you know,
so great. They didn't have to set it up or anything.
Yeah.
They didn't know where they were. Awesome.
Just the memory of like going out there and poking around in the woods with my grandfather and my uncle and my dad, and, you know, finally finding a big patch of these morels and taking them home and battering them, because that's what they did. They like to soak them in salt water first, the old timers, because they were afraid of the bugs, and then took them out and rolled them in flour and fried them in butter until they were nice and crispy. And you know, I always kind of like pined for that flavor, and it was really hard to find and hard to get. And every year I'd go out, you know, after my grandfather quit taking me, and look for them without much success for a very long time. But I did start to find all these other mushrooms. So I'm out there looking for morels, probably at the wrong time of the year then, and finding these other mushrooms and thinking to myself, well, I'm going to try to figure out what these are. So, you know, kind of picking it apart, looking at all the identifying features, getting into some field guides, seeing if I could figure out what they were. And I started to notice that, you know, a lot of these mushrooms were mushrooms that were choice edible mushrooms, like chanterelles or black trumpets, or, you know, any of those things. And it occurred to me as I was like doing more research, because, you know, I kind of obsess over things when I get into them. So I'm digging, and I'm seeing that, you know, in France, for example, chanterelles and black trumpets are kind of treated with the same respect that morels are here. People go out and hunt for them every year. It's a big deal, and so it just kind of, that was just like the basis of me getting an idea for doing this.
And what area of the world was
So
this?
I grew up in southwestern Pennsylvania, Ligonier. My grandfather had a sustenance farm in Ligonier. He raised cattle and chickens and rabbit and strange things like pheasants and an occasional hog. And we had a big vegetable garden, a couple 100 acres. Actually, the farmhouse was built in 1843, and from what I understand, my ancestors lived in the barn prior to that when it was first built. So most of this was done on and around that property, that he owned there, which was like Lockland Town, Ligonier area.
So had they, I don't know, can you seed mushrooms in the forest? Can you like set it up
To
so
some
that you have a good
degree,
environment?
yeah, you can. The saprobic mushrooms, so like saprobic meaning a mushroom that decays already dead or dying wood, you can cultivate those mushrooms if you want to. We didn't do any of that at the time. But then the mushrooms that I'm speaking of mostly, like the morels and the chanterelles and the black trumpets, they're all ectomycorrhizal species. Well, morels are kind of a gray area. We don't understand them really well. But chanterelles
They're
are...
a mystery.
Yes, clearly.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, they actually, from what we understand, act as an ectomycorrhizal at some points in their life cycle. At other points in their life cycle, they act saprobic. At other points in their life cycle, it's just kind of, it varies, and we don't understand really exactly their ecology yet. And that's part of the reason why, we really can't cultivate them. It is being done in China with the strictly saprobic varieties of morels. But there hasn't been much success with the varieties that we know have a clear mycorrhizal, life cycle. But actually, since you mentioned that, speaking with my grandfather when we were young, this was always kind of our dream project, was to figure out how to grow morels and put them into the woods out there. So never did come to pass, but we did a lot of, we called Paul Stamets and spoke with him in I think 1993 about this, and he discouraged us from actually doing it. But at one point in time, he had put out a catalog that had morel spawn for sale, and we wanted to purchase it from him. And I think when we called him was right after the point in time where he had quit selling it.
Oh,
Yeah. But I don't think
you
it
didn't
would
have
worked
any just
anyways.
laying around you could scrape into a
Well,
baggie
he
for
said
you?
that, really, he was selling it, in the hopes that someone would figure out how to really get it to work. But it just had not been successful for really anybody, so.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So was it strictly mushrooms that you would go out and you had an interest in, or was it all kinds of foraging?
No, it pretty much was strictly mushrooms at that time. And, I had kind of talked with him and discussed it. And, we had the family farm there. And my goal was to start a mushroom farm there at the farm years and years and years ago. And this had been since probably the time I think I read Paul Stamets' book, The Mushroom Cultivator, in 1993. I mean, he gets a lot of flack from people, but I have to say he was at the time my inspiration for getting into, this line of work, or figuring out how to get into it, or just getting me interested in it.
His name was Paul Stamen?
Paul Stamets. Yeah, he's a
Stamets,
famous mycologist. But yeah, if you want to learn and just even watch something really kind of cool, he just recently did a Netflix thing. It's called Fantastic Fungi.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was a really cool kind of, really great artwork, great time-lapse photography, a lot of information that if you don't know about mushrooms is kind of a good basis and good starting point to get interested in it. Yeah. Oh, it was a big thing about 2 years ago. I had a whole bunch of new customers coming to the booth, and the first thing they would ask, have you seen the new movie? Fantastic Fungi. And of course I did watch it.
I mean, having that slow motion or the time lapse
Yes.
videos of stuff is just fascinating.
Yeah, super cool.
Nobody's got the patience to sit there and watch it happen in real
right?
life.
It kind of
So of course it's phenomenal to watch. Yeah.
Absolutely, and it gives you an idea of how these things really are alive. When you see them moving, you get that feeling that they are a living, growing organism. But yeah, that's how I got started out, and it's been a goal that I have had since I was probably in my early 20s.
That is phenomenal. I always admire people that have like something that they latch onto and then they're like, this is me and are going through life together.
Yep.
This is what we're doing. We're buddies and we're
Yep. And it's just a matter of figuring out how to make it work. I couldn't afford to start a mushroom farm. It's expensive. You need a lot of equipment. Laminar flow hood for one, which, a new laminar flow hood, the cheapest introductory models are $3,500, $4,000.
What is a laminar flow hood?
So a laminar flow hood is a workspace, essentially, that passes HEPA-filtered air in a laminar pattern. So it's moving at the same rate of speed throughout the entire area of the work surface, and it's moving in the same direction so that you can work with controlled motions as long as you don't put your hands in front of what you're working with to where the air would be blowing onto it. You can work and completely keep things sterile. So like, for example, when people are culturing bacteria on petri dishes, you need to know in a lab.
So you have a sterile environment already
Yes.
that you've created, and you need
no other contaminants are getting into that petri dish to grow and live while you have it open and are working on it. So
because of the airflow control that you have.
exactly, the air blows down. The air is completely 100% clean. Now, if you were to pass your hand over that airflow, over your petri dish, in between the airflow, you could blow a fleck of skin off that has some other bacteria, fungi, etc., that would then land in the petri dish and contaminate it. So you still have to know sterile technique, which is a way of doing those controlled movements while you're working in the flow hood. But yes, all the work in mushroom cultivation has to be done in a sterile environment like that. And then that's not all of it. You need other things to get that media sterile to start. You need, steam sterilization and autoclaves and, just a whole lot of stuff.
Which is just so mind-boggling when it grows on decaying wood in the middle of the forest.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you can't replicate nature.
Such controlled environments to attempt to replicate nature.
Well, it just goes to show you the, I don't know how to say it, but the ability of life to continue itself, what it actually goes into it in nature. For that to happen, for those two spores to meet up and find the perfect sterile little area to mate and produce a dikaryote and grow and consume the proper nutrients and finally fruit. I mean, it's like a 1 in a million occurrence, but it happens every day in nature. In the lab, we can control it, and we can take our two spores we want and put them together and create that dikaryote and get things going. But
wow.
Yeah.
It's such a thing to admire.
It really is. Yeah.
The humble little mushroom.
Yeah. Yep. And its will to live and reproduce. But yeah, so I don't know. I got off track. I worked in horticulture. That's my background. I got a degree in horticulture. I managed big greenhouses for years and moved on to produce farms later, and just eventually got to the point where I decided, hey, I'm gonna talk all my buddies that pick wild mushrooms. I can do this without the equipment, right? I can get people good mushrooms. I've been going out there in the woods. I've been finding these awesome, tasty, high-end specialty mushrooms, and they're out there. They're out there in mass. And me and my friends have been going out and picking and finding them, and but we ran into this problem too, where we didn't have them when a restaurant called us. We might have them one day and we'd make a sale and get it into a restaurant, and then they'd call us next week and we wouldn't have any. Or we'd walk in the door and they'd say, oh no, we just picked our own, and then we'd end up with 50 pounds that we just got done spending a whole day picking with no home for them. So I just thought, let's skip all this mushroom farming for now. We can get into that later. Going to start to talk these guys into working with me, and we'll pull our efforts and we'll become a consistent, reliable source, and it's just a matter of time. If we just keep doing it, we might have to throw a lot of mushrooms away or dry them or save them or can them or whatever for now, but eventually we'll get that momentum that we need, and then we can all find our role and make it work.
I want to make sure that we're clear about your business model.
Yes.
So you have folks that go out and hunt mushrooms for you and bring them back, and
Yep.
they're your contracted
Yes.
staff, I guess, and you buy them from them and then
Yep.
sell them to your customers. I think that's a brilliant idea. So you want to tell us about the...
Well, totally. A
people
lot
that
of
you
these
do that
guys are people who like to spend a lot of time in the woods. Maybe not so much with people, and that's okay. And they're really good at what they do. And this isn't everybody. There's this people that pick mushrooms, they run the entire gamut. From guys who have a camp at Tionesta and like to stay every weekend but can't really afford to, so they've decided that they're going to pick mushrooms the whole time while they're at their camp and come back and bring them to me. And, instead of going to work for 2 days, they're getting paid to be at their camp for 2 days. And then there's other guys who go out for me full time, and this is what they do. They may have other jobs at other points in the year that they'll do, handyman jobs, or, pick up some work with a buddy doing construction or whatever. But in the summer, when chanterelles are in season, they'll be out every day picking chanterelles for me. And, I like it. It makes me happy that I can give some work to these guys, and they feel independent. They're not beholden to me. If they want to, they don't have to tell me they're quitting if they don't want to do it anymore, or if they want to do more, just let me know. You can go out and work as long as you want, or don't.
That's really interesting, and I want to dig a little bit deeper into that, because I'm super curious about how you manage that
It's
flow,
difficult.
because it's a business that you have, and you have to have product, you have to sell product,
Yes.
and to keep it. Do people, and also, do these guys, I'm so curious, do these guys have a territory? Do they have...
Oh yeah, every one of them has their own spots, and that's private information. I'll never ask these guys for their spots, nor
They
would
don't
I ever expect them
overlap?
to
Do they
tell
talk
me.
to each other?
Not so much. I don't think there is much overlap. We're not allowed to pick commercially in the state parks, the city parks, the state forests, the federal forests. So a lot of the times,
Okay.
these guys are picking on family property, or a friend's family's property, or a hunting camp, or some other private land that they have access to. And there may be some crossover, but I don't think there's too much of it. The issue is that people are not always that dedicated to it. So I have guys that get real into it, and maybe will do it for a year or two and get really good, and then they want to do something else, and it doesn't appeal to them anymore. I have had a couple guys that have been with me from the start, but that's the minority. So every year I'm always putting out my feelers. I run a social media page that I use to network with these individuals. It's essentially just a Facebook buy-sell group that I created. There's not really so much buying and selling going on, but it draws people in initially, so then I can find more people. But I also stay on all the Pennsylvania foragers groups, the Pennsylvania mushroom hunters groups, any group I can be on. And if I see someone that clearly is, standing out from the crowd, they're posting pictures of themselves harvesting 30, 40, 50 pounds of mushrooms, and I reach out to them and I say, hey, you know, what do you think about working with me? And we get to talking, and you know, usually they will want to do it, but it's the kind of thing where people come and go all the time. There's always new people. So.
And how did you, besides, like, when you first started, how did you meet these people? Or was it just the Facebook group? Or?
Well, at the very, very beginning, it was
Yeah.
just me and the buddies that I knew from my hometown that we all like to pick mushrooms. You know, it's the
Okay.
one thing we had in common that we shared, and I convinced them all to agree to bring me all their mushrooms and let me sell all those mushrooms for you. And, you know, one-stop shops. So those restaurants, instead of calling you, and you, and going through the whole Rolodex before they find someone that has what they need, they can all just call me, you know, and we'll make this work out. And,
Cool.
you know, unfortunately, I mean, I still have 2 of those guys that I started with that work with me every year. They only do one mushroom. Porcini season, they go out, they pick porcini for me. They usually do really, really well. In 2 or 3 days, they get their check and then they're done. You know, that's it for the year.
Wow.
But it was a good starting point, you know, and it got me to where I need to be now.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you're a certified
Yes.
mushroom
I was the very first person
harvester? What is it called?
in Western Pennsylvania who is considered by the state Department of Agriculture an expert in the identification of edible wild mushrooms. So,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's huge.
Back when the Model Food Code was introduced during the Obama years, I think it was in response to a salmonella outbreak or something of the sort. They said we need to get all the state laws standardized, you know, as it relates to food safety, right? So one of the things that was in this model food code, which was like the template, I guess, for all the states who were going to create their food code, was that no wild mushrooms shall be introduced into commerce without having first been identified with certainty by an expert in the identification of wild mushrooms. There were also 2 other options that were provided, which was you could disallow wild mushroom sales in their entirety in your state. You know, and I forget what the third one was, but there was some third option as well. But most of the states opted for this identification, certification by an expert, right? Now, the problem was, when this first started, no one had ever decided how do we determine who is an expert in the identification of wild mushrooms. You know, how is this going to happen? So, when I first started trying to research the legalities of starting this business, I came across this law and I saw the requirement for having a license, and I called the Department of Agriculture and I said, how do I get this license? And they said, well, we don't know. We've never issued one of these licenses before.
And how long had it been in effect?
I guess it had been a few years. I don't know when Pennsylvania actually instituted their version of the Model Food Code. I think 2011 was whenever it was published, but it took a few years for every state to kind of like get on board with it, right?
And was this something you were paying attention to very closely politically, or
No,
you
I
just
wasn't
happened
really at
upon
the
it?
time. I was just at
Okay.
the time. I decided this is what I was doing. I needed to know what were the legalities. How do I do this
Gotcha.
right? And I came across this.
It just happened to be a couple years before they passed this
Yes.
thing, and then you found it. Gotcha.
Exactly. So I essentially spent about 2 years calling the Department of Agriculture on a somewhat weekly basis and asking them, hey, did you guys figure out how we're going to do this licensing process yet? And, you know, they kept bumping me to another person, well, I don't know, I'll send you up the food chain a little bit, until I got to the Director of Food Safety at the Department of Agriculture, who, by the way, was an extremely nice lady, and I spent about an hour on the phone with her every week for a couple months until she decided, I think, that, you know, I was utilizing a little too much of her time and she needed to come up with a solution for me. So she said, if you go to Michigan, they have solved this in Michigan, right? They had the big Morel Festival, and the food safety people came in and shut down the Morel Festival, which is like a huge deal for Michigan. And all the mycologists were there when this happened, and they decided they were going to solve the problem. So they created their own test, and the MDARD, which is, I believe, the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, agreed to go along with their program. So Michigan State University, in cooperation with them, created a program. They said, you go there, take Michigan's exam, come back, show us that you passed it, and we'll provide reciprocity. So I was then the second person in the state to receive the license, but the first person in Western PA. I think the first person to receive it was Chris Dara out towards Philadelphia. And
oh, damn Philly, they always get ahead of us.
He had a friend who was a doctor of mycology that vouched for him, and they had given him the very, very first license based on that. So.
And you got the second?
Yes, I was the second.
That's
but the first person to take a test and do it, the way that it is being done now. So
that's a great story that the Morel Festival got shut down with all those mycologists there who are like, do you know what a mushroom is?
Yeah, right?
Government people.
That's it. I mean...
That's hilarious. Wow.
So now I think there's been several hundred people in the state of Pennsylvania who have taken and passed this exam. It's no longer just Michigan State University. I think there's a program through Mushroom Mountain that can be done online for a few $100s, and they'll certify you as well. But it's come a long ways. They've recognized that this is not something that's going to be stopped. It's only growing, and we need to make a space for it.
That's great. So have you ever had a bad experience with mushrooms?
No, I don't think I really have. I have tried a lot of questionable edible mushrooms. Mushrooms that we don't really know how edible they are, but kind of based on their relationship with other mushrooms, I've determined, it's going to be pretty safe to try. So I have had a few that I've gotten some upset stomachs kind of issues from, but nothing serious. And I would never try anything, like an amanita or something in that category of mushrooms that could kill you.
What does the amanita do?
Now, there's several different kinds of amanita. Some are, I don't want to say hallucinogenic, but psychotropic to some degree, and others are, liver failure kind of mushrooms. But generally speaking, the mushrooms that will kill you are all in the same families, so you can, in general, just rule out eating that entire grouping of mushrooms and be pretty safe, For example, most mushrooms in the bolete family are generally speaking safe to eat, so there are a few that will give you a little stomach upset, but, that can be anything. People have idiosyncratic reactions to mushrooms. If it's the first time you're trying it, you should always go slow. I mean, there is the possibility that you are allergic to just that one particular kind of mushroom and no other mushrooms. And how would you know if you've never tried it?
Yeah.
People in general are a little more scared of mushrooms than other groupings of foods. But there are probably more toxic plants out there, that you could go and try to forage without knowing that could kill you than there are actually mushrooms. So it's, just something to be aware of. You should always kind of know what you're eating, to some degree at least.
The other day I ate chrysanthemum greens.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know you could.
Yeah.
That was really wild.
I forget
and it does have it's got that extra bitterness, which usually is symbolic or signaling not to eat it, but it was good.
Pyrethrins, I believe, in chrysanthemum. I can't remember, but yeah, it was used as a pesticide or a natural.
Were young leaves, and they were delicious. It's really nice.
Cool.
Maybe it was a particular kind. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
So you haven't died from the mushroom that you eat?
I have Armillaria mellia. Makes me sick every time. People in Pittsburgh. They call them honey mushrooms, and for people of Polish descent in the city of Pittsburgh, it is like, the Christmas time sour mushroom soup mushroom. All the old Polish grannies went out and picked them, dehydrated them, and put them in that sour mushroom soup for Christmas. But it is one of those mushrooms that more people have idiosyncratic reactions to than some other varieties. But yes, they make me like violently ill every time. But a lot of people eat them like every year with no problem. So.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's
are
okay.
You, are you Polish?
No.
Oh, good.
I'm
That's fine.
totally cool with it. I didn't even like the taste of them. So like for some reason, everything about that mushroom didn't appeal to me.
Yeah. What is your background?
So my great grandmother was an immigrant from France. My grandfather's English. And then on my mother's side, about the same thing, German, English, a little mix of European.
Mushrooms are having a huge moment in public right now.
Totally.
People are growing mushrooms. I saw probably 200 people on my Facebook feed with the mushroom kits that they're putting up plastic tents to make sure the moisture is enough because our houses are so dry and blah, blah.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a huge movement right now. And how's that affected your business?
It's been generally speaking good for it. People are getting more interested in them. They want to try new things. A lot of people who are getting into vegetarianism and veganism who are looking for a protein source. But it's opening up people's minds to trying new things. They're seeing these movies like Fantastic Fungi, and there's new mushroom farms popping up all the time. They're really, not affecting me much. I think at some point the market will be saturated locally, and some of these businesses will probably fail, but it is what it is. I think it's kind of trendy, so a lot of people are doing it because it's the cool thing to do. Eventually, those people are going to be the ones who won't continue on with it forever.
Most of your product is foraged, but some of
A
it
large majority,
is actually
yes.
farmed.
Yes, I have grown a lot of mushrooms myself. Once we got the money going for the business, I got myself my flow hood, going back to the start there, and, autoclaves and all the necessary stuff. And, we've grown things like oysters, lion's mane, black pearl kings, chestnuts, piapino, even enoki, beech, king trumpets, all sorts of stuff. And when I got going with this, with the whole idea of the cooperative business model with the foragers, when people started popping up with little mushroom farms, they'd reach out to me and say, hey, can I get in on this too? And you know what? If we can, I love to do it, So there's a couple farms around here that we sell their products on a semi-regular basis. They're busy with the cultivation end of things 24/7 and don't have the time to go out and really work on selling them, so we like to help them, get their product
Sounds
to
like
market.
Perfect partnership. Yeah. That's great. I have two questions.
Sure.
You mentioned protein.
Yes.
Protein in mushrooms, but
Totally.
also if there's protein in it, I know that changes the food safe handling
Yeah.
of the product. So it's not like carrots that
No.
you're transporting and you're shipping. So talk a little bit about that. First, like the protein, and then like how
Sure.
you do the food safe handling.
So yeah, mushrooms are generally speaking somewhere in the neighborhood of 30% protein by weight. They're generally speaking high in vitamin B and can be very high in vitamin D if they were exposed to sunlight. They actually absorb vitamin D from the sun like we do and then store it in their cell walls. So it's one of the few food sources where you can get vitamin D from eating a product. They're very low in calories and they have a great flavor. So, they're really an ideal substitute for meat for people who don't want to eat meat but, are trying to stick with like a vegan vegetarian diet. As far as food safety, storage, handling goes, they are very particular. That's been a huge part of my business, is figuring out how to keep this product nice and get it to market safely. So I probably spent more money on refrigeration than any other tool or piece of equipment in my business. I have at the moment 6 commercial refrigeration units with enough capacity to store around 750 pounds of mushrooms at any given time.
Wow.
Now they cannot be sealed up.
mushrooms aren't that heavy, so that's why
No,
it's like,
they
wow.
take a lot of space. One of those big stainless steel upright coolers can fit 90 pounds of mushrooms the way I store them.
Wow.
You know, and I actually have a really good system figured out where I'm utilizing almost every square inch of space in that cooler besides the room it requires to let that air movement around the outside to keep them cold. But yeah, they have to breathe. You can't seal them up, you know, so this is a thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration. Mushrooms lose 10% of their weight through evaporation every single day. So if I get 100 pounds from one of my mushroom pickers on Monday, by Tuesday I have 91 pounds. By Wednesday I have 82 pounds, you know, and so on and so forth. They dry out. Yeah, they're 90% water by weight. So that water evaporates, and they're a living, breathing organism. After you harvest them, they're still alive, just like other vegetables. So they're still respiring. They're, you know, putting out their breath, so to speak, and that's causing them to evaporate. So if you were to try to seal them up into a plastic container, for example, like a Tupperware, they would pretty immediately die and start spoiling. So you can't do that. They have to breathe. So I have special containers that I've had made that fit into my coolers with about 3.5 inches of clearance on every side. They're completely ventilated. They then get lined with paper, and essentially, even with all that, I have a few days to get them to market before, you know, they're not looking good. Or, you know, when I sell them to people, I want people to be able to take them home and put them in their refrigerator for a week if they want to before they have to eat them. So, you know, really ultimately, I like to have every mushroom sold within a few days of it being harvested, max. If not that day, if it's possible, you know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, they're precious.
And when you think about all that water weight that you lose too, you know, that factors into the equation of, let's say I paid my guy to pick this mushroom X number of dollars, and I'm going to sell it at X number of dollars, but if I lose 20% of what I have to sell in 3 days, you know, so it's motivation for me to get them to market quickly.
So what do you do this time of year when you don't have the market every week?
I still just keep doing mushrooms. Unfortunately, it's a cyclical sort of thing. The restaurants go into budget mode in the wintertime. They don't use specialty produce as much. You know, they need to keep it tight so they can make money. The markets aren't really going. I still have a market every other week that I do, and it's nice. It keeps things going. But I still have to maintain, you know, I'm providing a service to the community. People want my mushrooms. So for those people who still want their mushrooms in the wintertime, I have to be here. I have to be doing things. And luckily, I found a great team of people that live on the West Coast. They're from Washington State, but they travel down into coastal Oregon, and they harvest wild mushrooms for me in the wintertime. And then we put them on a plane, and they're here in 6 or 8 hours, and I take those to market. Now, you know, like I said, it's slow, and I end up, you know, kind of by the time spring rolls around, I'm not doing so well anymore, but, you know, I usually always make it through, so.
Do you post stuff on your Facebook, like, hey, I've got these mushrooms?
Yeah, typically I do, and I like to keep it kind of like in a cycle, so I do my market every other week, and so I kind of stick to that routine of, you know, having all the new fresh wild product come in every other week, and I let people know, let's, you know, if you want to get it, let's work with my schedule here and make it happen. And you know, it's been good. People have been very supportive during the pandemic. So I've had a website this entire time. I haven't been always as dedicated to stocking product on that website, but during the pandemic, it was bumping. I was in the wintertime delivering 30, 40 boxes of mushrooms across town, like every week to people's doorsteps. And that
door to door.
Yeah, door to door.
Wow.
I let them put in orders on the website. I had a little delivery fee I charged, and I would go out and every other day drop off boxes of mushrooms. So
You're not doing that anymore?
I still will do it. People can call me.
Okay.
It's just not been, you know, I think people got over that whole fear of going to the grocery store and looking for ways to get things delivered, and, you know, they're willing to come back out to the farmer's market or drive to my house now if they want to. So usually I just tell my customers, the ones that purchase in the winter know me well enough. They call me on my cell phone and say, "Hey, TJ, can I stop by your house tomorrow?" And I say, "Sure."
Well, thanks for bringing me
Yeah,
some.
absolutely. I have taken up the hobby of lapidary in the last few years. So in the wintertime, I cut some stones and I sell a few of those, and it kind of supplements things and helps out.
Oh yeah, and you've gotten a couple trips.
I have.
Quite some gems and stuff.
Yeah, we
so
like to
that's
do a
fun.
little mining for fun in the winter. Go down south. It's a good excuse to go down south and get some warm air and, have
That's
a little
cool.
fun playing in the dirt.
And do you find mushrooms while you're doing that too?
I have not yet. That's not to say I
Really?
won't, but I haven't.
funny.
It's still kind of cold, You have to, even down there, I think the last time we went to Arkansas, and I did keep my eye open for mushrooms, but we were still in the 45 degree range every day. It wasn't super warm or anything. The West Coast is much better for mushrooms in the wintertime than the eastern part of the country is. They get some magnificent flushes of mushrooms in the wintertime. I did see the other day, however, my friend in Louisiana recently found a very large fruiting of hedgehog mushrooms, which is one of my favorites. And I asked him, I said, "What is this? It's wintertime. Where did these come from?" He said, "I guess they've been growing here the whole time, just nobody's ever looked for them. And this was the first. So now we know."
That just reminds me of climate change. Have you seen a
Oh,
lot
totally.
of effects from
Yeah,
climate change
big
in the
time.
mushrooms?
Totally.
Because I know it's not just longitude and latitude. I guess it's just longitude, but elevation makes
Yeah.
a difference in it as well.
It does. We're seeing a lot more drought in early summer here in Pennsylvania. Now, I know in theory we're supposed to get wetter as a wet climate with climate change, but what I have noticed in the last few years is that we're getting these huge droughts in May and early June, and it's becoming problematic for the crop. Luckily, we have recovered. Like last year, we ended up getting a lot of great rain through the second half of the summer, and everything perked back up. But the heat is getting, it's getting to be a little excessive as well. Things are much different. Like today, it's a frigid, Pennsylvania wintertime day, but
Blustery, one might say.
yes. But I would say that when I was a kid, we had very few of those 45, 50 degree days that we seem to so regularly have here now.
Yeah. It's been, when you hit winter stays.
Yes.
It doesn't go up to 45, 50. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a little terrifying.
it is. I'm worried about our children's future and our children's future, and got to do something about it.
So are morel mushrooms still your favorite?
No,
Ah.
I have graduated. I still love morels, and every year I look forward to them. It's still my favorite thing to eat at that time of the year when they come back into season. But honestly, now I look more forward to the porcini season and the black trumpet season than anything else. Those have become my two favorite mushrooms. And the hedgehog, a close second and third, the hedgehog and chanterelle. Of course, I'm kind of funny like that. My favorite mushroom is typically whatever just came into season. Because by the time I've been eating one for a few months, I'm ready for a new one. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you mentioned the nutrients in the mushrooms. They all have different levels of nutrients, I'm guessing.
To some
It's
degree.
not all the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't really done any studies on this, and it's hard to find studies on this, but there have been a few very limited studies done. The ones that I have seen, for example, were regarding the vitamin D, and then exposure to sun drying versus air drying, and vitamin D content in shiitakes. So sun-dried shiitakes are much higher in vitamin D content.
That
for
is
example.
super interesting. I
Yeah.
would have thought that when you said that, I thought it was during the growing process. Mushrooms grow in the shade, though, don't they?
Typically, yes.
So they only get the sun when they're being
Yes.
processed.
Sun-dried. They would get some, but not like, what you would get from actually placing them out in the sun on racks to dry.
And how do you know if they've been sun-dried or...
Well, you just see that's the
oven-dried
great
or-
thing about local food is you can ask the person how it was done. When you're buying stuff at the grocery store, you can read the label if it even gives you any indication, but how do you really know?
So as a consumer, if I bought some fresh mushrooms and took them home and sun-dried them, like on trays in my yard, that would add to the vitamin D?
Yes, we know at least in shiitake, for example, that does happen. I would assume that would be the case in many other varieties of mushrooms as well, but we only have the data to back up shiitake for now.
That is fascinating now, because so many people have vitamin D deficiency, especially in days like today.
I know, that was one of the funny things. My doctor actually tested my vitamin D levels and has prescribed me vitamin D to take because he said, this is a huge problem in our area of the world. People are just all chronically deficient in vitamin D.
Well, I would be curious to see if you could counter that deficiency with mushrooms in yourself.
That would be a great...
has that happened?
That would be a great test to undertake.
One of the things I'm exploring, as I mentioned earlier, is how urban agriculture has affected folks who sell at the farmers market.
Yes.
So have you seen anything in your business? Is that reflected
as far as
all?
mushrooms go? No, not really. Besides the fact that people are, generally speaking, more interested in the mushrooms, and a lot of them are, they got a grow bag as a gift from somebody and decided, I'm going to stop by the mushroom booth and see what's available. So that's been positive overall. No, but other than that, I'm dealing with some competition now, which is good and healthy. I have no interest in, expanding, taking over territories, growing my business any further than it is. I'm pretty happy with where it's at and what it is, and the customers that I have and the community that I take care of and what I offer and what they offer me. So if I can just maintain that, I'll be happy.
Have you seen a difference in your business from the competition? Have you seen a decrease in business from the competition?
Not so much. Just at one or two markets. I've had a couple markets where they have brought in additional mushroom vendors. In one case, set up, right next door to me, and it was at one of my larger markets. So, what I'm just doing this year, I know which products do really well at that market. And it's a long drive. And I know what times of the year they do well, so it has hurt my sales for that second and third half of the season when we have exactly the same products as one another.
And are they farming or foraging?
Yes, they are pretty much strictly farming.
And you're pretty
And I'm doing
foraging,
farming and foraging. So, I am focused on the foraged mushrooms, but I would say a solid 50%, if not just under that, of what I sell are cultivated mushrooms. But yeah, so from here on out, I'm just gonna, give them that second half of the year whenever I have the morels, which is what everybody wants at that market. I'll go and provide the morels and then just be done, because it's a long drive anyways.
Yeah. You, in my mind, you kind of have an advantage in that you are working with seasonality.
Yeah.
And so you have a natural flow of diversity in your product selection.
Yeah.
And they have their mushrooms, and they could have crop failure.
Yeah, it's happened. I know. In fact, and they've been really great. I don't ever want to say a bad word about the particular farm that is set up next to me at the other market. When they've had these crop failures, they come in, they still set up at the market, they don't have any product to sell, and they send everyone over to me. And I do the same. I haven't had lion's mane for quite a while now, so I always send everyone that's asking for lion's mane directly over to them. If it's something that I have, I won't do that, but when they have something I don't, hey guys, right over there, just
See, that just makes you even more likable. Come on, that's
how
great.
we should be.
Absolutely.
Now that's a huge market. There are 160 vendors at that market, and there are on average 5,000 customers that come through in a given day. 5,000 to 7,000. There's a lot more room. Now, if it were to be 2 or 3 mushroom vendors at a market that has 20 vendors, for example, that could be, that could seriously hurt my business, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's neither here nor there. We can take it out. I don't care. It's kind of
Okay.
dumb. But yeah.
No, it's just interesting because business is such an interesting thing, and then farmers markets is a specific type of a specific category in the business world that is just like people think it's so simple.
It's not. It's not.
It's one of my biggest topics of conversation on a lot of these podcasts because
Totally.
people don't you can't just set something up and
You
then
can't.
go.
No. I think I've been doing the markets with the city of Pittsburgh since 2017. My first one was Ligonier, and I started that in 2016, late 2016, I believe. And then started.
I think it would have been 18.
Might have been 18, yeah. Yep, I'm having a hard time actually recalling exactly what year it was.
Yeah.
It's been a few years though.
What's next for mushrooms?
The next big thing in mushroom, it's already kind of getting there, is the use of psilocybe mushrooms in psychotherapeutic medicine. I really firmly believe we're getting into stage 3 trials now, that within a few years we'll start to be seeing it used in a clinical setting for treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, for depression and anxiety and things like that. And I foresee at least some change on a national level where people are going to be allowed to, in most all areas of the United States, access that medicine through their therapists. And it's already big in the regards that people are excited about it, people are talking about it, the research is being done. But I think that's the next big thing that will change and occur. And then I also think on a much less publicized level, we're going to start to see fabrics being produced from mushrooms. We're going to start to see bioremediation being done with mushrooms. We're going to start to see, all sorts of vegan leathers and, just
Leather.
all sorts of probably dyes for fabrics and, just people are experimenting on every level. Insulating bricks with the mycelium blocks. I think we're going to see a lot. I think it's huge. I think people are just really starting to kind of grasp the basics of what mushrooms can do and be for us. And I think there's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever told you this story, but in 2013, I went to Tennessee to a fermentation workshop with Sandor Katz.
Oh, very cool.
And we went to visit the Barefoot Farmer. Have you heard of the Barefoot
No.
Farmer? Dude doesn't wear shoes all year long.
Okay.
So it's Tennessee, it's a little bit warmer,
Yeah.
but not entirely. It gets cold there. But he was a really fascinating guy, and we were standing, he had this big rolling hill farm, and we're standing on one of his fields, and he was like, we don't fertilize.
Yeah.
We do compost and we let things go fallow and, whatever. He's like, but, underneath this, and he dug up some and you could see the mycelium. He's like, the mycelium network moves nutrients around this farm. So if that field over there needs something, it gets word to the rest of the fields. And then the mycelium transfers that nutrient to wherever it needs to go. And we were just like, mind blown. And we're like out on this, in this fermentation workshop. So we're all really open to suggestions and ideas like that. And so we're just like, okay, that's cool. It's kind of a little far out, but that's want to think it's a thing, right? Well, now it's become more mainstream. I've started hearing stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long.
We
it was 10
didn't
years ago.
understand this before. This is new information for us, but it's been happening forever. Since the dawn of time, since mushrooms have been in existence. But once we start to really more fully grasp how they work, we're going to start to be able to do a lot with them in that regards, as a way to protect trees from infections or move nutrients around for other crops, or even maybe as a pesticide. My friend here in Pittsburgh has been working on a pesticide that is almost 100% effective against the spotted lantern flies.
Lantern flies.
Yes. So he went out and just searched all over for dead lantern flies and found a particular species of fungi that was like infecting, colonizing, taking over these. And he put it into culture and has been running tests. And yes, it actually was effective on ticks because he tried it on ticks,
Like that.
but on the spotted lanternflies. So, there's so much.
Fungi.
Fungi. That's actually the reason for the name for the business. It was like an inside joke. It's so silly, but a real fun guy. Everybody came to my booth and they told me the joke about the mushroom that walks into the bar. Hey, he's a real fun guy. But it's pronounced fungi. So I thought I'm going to name the business this just so people can mispronounce it all the time and not tell me that joke.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right, on that note, TJ, thank you so much for
Thank
meeting
you.
with me. This was such a pleasure.
I enjoyed it myself.
And I will see you at the next market.
Sounds good. I'll see you then.
Everyone knows that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon. Everyone knows that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon. Lick that spoon.
With Bowl and Spoon is written, produced and hosted by Shelley Danko Day. Copy editing by Carolyn Ristow of Details Review. Original theme song was written and performed by Paul LeBreeze and friends. You can listen to With Bowl and Spoon wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe, like, review and share. Follow us and send us questions or messages on Facebook and Instagram at With Bowl and Spoon. Thanks for listening.